1, 2, 3, 4.
This is Jerry Marotta, an upstate New York-based drummer, producer, arranger, and songwriter who's played for Peter Gabriel, Hall & Oates, Joan Armatrading, Cher, Elvis Costello, Sheryl Crow, Robert Fripp, Tony Levin, Indigo Girls, Eric Johnson, Paul McCartney, Peter Murphy, John Mayer, Stevie Nicks, Iggy Pop, Tears for Fears, Suzanne Vega, Annie DeFranco, T-Bone Burnett, and that's only scratching the surface. Jerry comes from a family of musicians. His brother Rick is another legendary drummer who's performed with Aretha Franklin, Carly Simon, Steely Dan, James Taylor, Paul Simon, John Lennon, and Linda Ronstadt, among other icons. To be brutally honest, my focus and my obsession was on Jerry's time with Peter Gabriel in the 70s and 80s, as it was a crucial time in my drumming and songwriting development. It was intriguing to me to figure out the same drummer who played on Shock the Monkey, I Have the Touch, and Games Without Frontiers also played the grooves on Still the One and Kisses on My List. This is the essence of expanding your chops portfolio by listening to as many genres of music as you can at a young age in order to keep all your gig doors open. In this chat, besides his introduction to Peter and specific song techniques, we talk about how he got started, life on the road, auditioning for Journey, working with world-famous singer-songwriters, how he developed his chops, including his patented shuffle, adjusting to ever-changing technology in the studio, which includes playing with loops and samples, how to extend a career as a musician, and how he actually went jogging with Peter up Salisbury Hill. That's pretty amazing. Jerry was generous enough to take time out for me during a busy day at his home base, Dreamland Studios. Let's check in with him. So I just kind of have an outline. I just wanted to tell you why you were important to me and then maybe ask you some technical questions and whatnot.
Of course.
My focus is pretty narrow. I'm an 80s kid.
Awesome.
So,
that's my favorite.
I grew up in the new wave. I grew up in LA, and so the radio station there was K-Rock 106.7, and we got all the cutting edge stuff.
What was the guy? The guy got really famous. I don't know, back.
Richard
Well,
Blade.
what's his name? Shoot, I can't remember.
DJ?
There's a guy. Well, that was I thought like it really blew up.
It's Jed the Fish, Rodney on the Rock, Richard Blade, Dusty
None of those guys.
Dusty Street.
Another guy. Maybe he was gone by the I think in the 90s. Hang on one second.
Yeah.
This is unplugged. Is that unplugged for a reason? No. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I don't want to touch anything because
why is it unplugged?
I don't know.
Maybe the power supply just got unplugged by accident.
I just didn't want to touch anything because I didn't want to interrupt you.
It just.
Okay, super. All right, man. So, what was his name? What's that guy's name? Because it's funny. He was hugely KCRW. What's the guy? Do you remember that?
No, the radio station.
Yeah, in L.A.
Oh, Santa Monica.
Public radio, but anyway, Ariel lived in L. He's one of the engineers here. He lived in L.A. and I'll remember his name. But here's the reason the guy who took his place, which was 500 people in the country. It was like the holy grail of radio.
Yeah.
The guy that took his place was from Woodstock, and he was a DJ here on a station here in Woodstock. And in my studio years ago, in the 80s, he wanted to become a DJ, so he came into my studio and he was mocking up radio shows. Like where he was the DJ. Like he made a demo tape.
Yeah. Where
he was like DJ. He was being the DJ and playing music. You know what I mean? Which was very smart because he didn't go you didn't get a degree in communication. He just wanted to do it. And then he's English, so he had his English accent, and he was on a station here in Woodstock, which is a very good station. And then he submitted a demo, and he was the guy. He won the job. Chris Doritas, that's the guy's name.
Okay.
Chris Doritas. He went on to become a music supervisor. You know what I mean? He moved up to supervising films and television.
Yeah.
Anyway, and Nick Harcourt was the guy from Woodstock who took over.
That's the name I was thinking of, Nick Harcourt.
Sorry, I'm boring you with this, but this was definitely this had to be in the 90s. Had to be.
Yeah, I remember Nick.
Hey, let's move on.
Okay. So yeah, like I said, learning to play, getting better in the 80s, and K-Rock was there, and of course, many bands that you've been attached to are from the 80s, and of course, I've got a few anecdotes of how I sunk my teeth into the Peter Gabriel stuff, and
right.
And it was years later before I knew that you had such a long career before that, but it didn't make sense to me, only because you have such a vast array of styles. It sounded like a completely different drummer to me, more of like a pocket funk drummer, and then there's this guy playing with a little bit more slamming to my ears and playing with loops, and it's more tribal. And I'm wondering, from what was that transition, or how did that happen, going from more the 70s sound into working with someone who had such a vision and creating these loops and more tribal?
I'm gonna explain the whole thing to you.
Okay.
So my older brother is a drummer, Rick Marotta.
Yeah.
A very successful drummer, by the way.
And you have a band together.
He was about what now we do, but
Okay.
he was about 8 years. He's 8 years older than me. So I'm 10. He's 18. Then he started playing drums when he was in college.
Yeah.
Then he went on to play with, if you Google him, and you might one day want him on you want to interview him. His credits are crazy. 3 Steely Dan records, Sinatra, Linda Ronstadt. He worked with everybody. Warren Zevon, Aretha Franklin. So I grew up in the early 70s and 60s listening to Motown. That was my thing. Black. If it wasn't black, it wasn't good. I'm a kid, even at 12, and I'm playing to Motown records. records, you know?
Yeah.
And if you think, when you think of that stuff, it's just pocket.
Yep.
Nothing, you know, no, just pocket.
Yeah.
Feel pocket, you know, a fill here or there, but you know,
Occasionally.
just laying the growth down. So, and then I joined a band in '73 that was kind of like Crosby, Stills, and Nash, you know, and I had been influenced at that point by like Russ Kunkel, you know, Fire and Rain, like Brushes on Toms, you know, if you're familiar with that, like
Yeah.
he was playing drums, but brushes. He wasn't playing jazz. He was playing like sticks, but with brushes and that sound. So I became very influenced by my brother Rick. I was influenced by Kunkel, and Jim Keltner was another guy who had a whole different style. But then so I did the Arthur Hurley Gottlieb thing. That was like Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And then I joined a band called Orleans, which was just radically funky, badass, you know, band, like kind of in the vein of like Little Feat, let's say, but with everybody singing and pop and semi-pop songs.
They were a hit
you know?
machine.
Oh, unbelievable band. And so this is, you know, I'm doing that funk thing, you know, but it's rock and soul. So then one of the main guy in Orleans quit in '77, and I just happened, somebody just said to me, this guy's looking for a drummer. Are you interested? And they gave me a cassette tape. It was Peter Gabriel's first record. So I listened to that, and it was totally off the wall. I mean, no funk, nothing black about it. And you know what I mean? But my band had just broken up.
Yeah.
And I was really heartbroken. I was about 20 at this point. I mean, I was very lucky. I was very young. And so I listened to the music, Moribund the Burgermeister, Waiting for the, you know, like a barbershop quartet. The stuff was very English sounding. And I thought, this is not like my wheelhouse, but it's interesting. It's a good paying gig, and it starts out in England, where I'd never been there before. So I took it on as a challenge, which I like a challenge, and I have a broad, like I've developed a broad sense of music. The reason I'm telling you this is I worked with Peter for about 10 years, and on 3 or 4 records and a live record, but Peter completely, I mean, I that changed my approach to music radically.
Yeah.
Radically. Because I would say Peter, he didn't particularly really love traditional drumming, you know, like Genesis and, you know, Phil Collins and, you know, those kinds of guys, busier, you know. He had a whole different impression of drums. So that I think he didn't really want drums to sound like a guy playing the drums. So, but there were no loops back then.
Yeah.
That, you know, when we started out, it was not a looping thing.
Yeah.
You know, but we probably created some loops. You know, we're talking about 2-inch tape. We're not talking about digital. You know what I mean? 2-inch tape was was a very different world than Pro Tools and Logic and digital.
But I know he was getting into those. He was one of the, you know, the grandfathers of, at least in modern music, of sampling and using the new keyboards that can sample and using percussive sounds and things like that. Yeah.
Got a Fairlight. Mm-hmm. He got a keyboard called a Fairlight, and like nobody had them. That's one thing I will say about Peter. You know, the record, I don't remember if it was Security. I can't remember which record it was, or the one before, where the Fairlight had a big influence on, and he also then, like, a company, I think it was Paia, Paia, had a little drum machine. You know, I mean, there was Rhythm Aces before that, but Paia made a drum machine. You could program it. It was almost like a kit, you know. So he got that, and that. So he was very into that and into controlling that sound. But in terms of what I would play. The band generally played. We would jam together. It was awesome. And Peter, really more than anything, he would say, I don't like that. Like, could you just try something different? But he was like a closet drummer, but he never sat down to like show me anything, but it was just smart. But eventually he started programming things, you know what I mean? And as the programming got more and more sophisticated, then he more and more did it, and he loved doing, he had control over the drum beats and stuff, but stuff,
did you have any 2 cents on helping him with the loops at all, or did he already have like it all mapped out in his head?
Well, at that point there really weren't. The loops were simple things that just kind of like
repeated,
lay down a group. But if really Security is the big record, and there are songs like Lay Your Hands on Me, Family and the Fishing Net. There are songs San Jacinto, with a marimba loop going on. I think that was maybe Larry Fast. Larry Fast had a very sophisticated sense of synthesizers. He was a musician, but he was also he was technically very proficient.
I Have the Touch. Was that on Security? Was that the record after? That was on
Yes,
Security?
I Have the Touch.
I think that was my favorite. That made the drum part on that song made such an impact on
that. That's Lindrum. That's really started to get into programming. Yeah. The Lindrum, which I still have, the Lind 2.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of really programming, more sophisticated programming, Lindrum. That might have been the Lind 1, and then Lind 2 came around. But I don't know. I don't remember, to be honest with you. I didn't sit there and create the loop, but I might have, as I started playing with it, I might have sort of made some adjustments. Maybe. I don't know. Honestly, I don't remember.
But it was like the combination of the loops, and then when you came in with the acoustic kit that made such a...
Love that. I love that. And
it just exploded through the speakers. It was great.
Oh, yeah. It's awesome. Awesome. And I tended to, I really liked working with it, with a Lindrum. I bought one. They were expensive too, like $3,000 something, back in 1980 something. But and then I would program percussion, but no bass drum, no snare drum, no tom. You know what I mean? It was just like all this like percussiveness floating around, and then leaving space for kick, snare, for drums to come in. And I love doing that, and I do that all the time.
That's why I was wondering how the point you were involved, because even on Eric Johnson's Tones, where you're credited as percussionist, I guess, or arranger, there are percussion atmospheres on that record that do remind me of those Peter Gabriel days, and
absolutely.
I'm wondering, is this kind of the sound that you were being recognized for?
Well, I honestly, like I said, and I always will. I mean, Peter, working with Peter was very influential in just the atmosphere. Yeah. I mean, he didn't teach me anything per se. It's just I learned from just being with Tony Levin, Larry Fast, David Rhodes, eventually was the guitar player, Peter and I, that was the band.
Yep.
And we developed it was like a band. It was, that's what a band does. You develop a lexicon, and I've rarely been as good. What I do really shines when I'm working with those people like that, where we understand what each other does, and that's that's really my favorite situation. Because really, honestly, Burke, all I ever want to be is in a band. That's all I ever want to be is in a band.
Me
a
too.
band, and but it's very hard to find a band and keep a band together. It's very difficult.
Hasn't been hard for you to be in a band. Just in case, people need to be reacquainted with your geniusness. I'm just going to roll through this really quick. The people that you've played with, or your credits. Not all of it. This is just scratching the surface. It just blows my mind. Peter Gabriel, Hall & Oates, Joan Armatrading, Cher, Elvis Costello, Sheryl Crow, Robert Fripp, Tony Levin, Indigo Girls, Eric Johnson, Paul McCartney, Peter Murphy, John Mayer, Stevie Nicks, Iggy Pop, Tears for Fears, Suzanne Vega, Annie DeFranco, T-Bone Burnett, and that's not even close to being the end.
I've been
I can't. That's like really just getting started. The funny thing is, I'll jump around here a little bit. You were owed a tremendous compliment by one of my recent guests, Zach Alford, who said that he originally was a self-taught guy. He came from the upper part of New York, I guess. But the one song that made him want to really concentrate on his kit was "Still the One." And he brought you up specifically, and I would never make that connection,
Of all the songs, I mean,
Yeah.
that's so funny because that's like a straight ahead kind of shuffle with my own little what do you call it, twist, which some people they would say they would say to me, you don't know how to play a shuffle. You don't know how to play a shuffle. I listen to Still the One. You want me to teach you how to play a shuffle? Because you don't know how to play a shuffle. Because I didn't hit the kick drum on 1 and 3. You know what I mean?
Right. No.
I played the kick drum. I played around with the kick drum pattern.
Yeah, I noticed that. It does.
Some people think, some people think it's the greatest shuffle they've ever heard. But I know Zach. I love Zach. He's great. He's a neighbor. I think he still lives nearby in Kingston. And
It's not a Purdy shuffle. It's a Marotta shuffle.
Well, that's it. Yeah. Well, the Purdy shuffle is. I would never put myself in the same category as Bernard Purdy. Just like I wouldn't put myself in the same category as Rick Marotta, my brother. My brother's a fucking badass player. I mean, he doesn't really play anymore.
Yeah.
But Bernard Purdy, that's what the shit I was listening to when I was like 10, 11, 12, playing along to that. But that Purdy shuffle is it's awesome. It's awesome. And Bernard is, he is an icon, and he's like, I hold him in very high regard, and I remind him of that every time I see him. He likes you to kiss the ring. He really does like the appreciation, and I love that. I mean, you can never hear it enough. You telling me what you told me, like when we just got on. Like, you know what I mean? Like you were thinking of the iconic drum, blah, blah, blah. Burke, I appreciate that. And I could never hear that enough. I mean, that's just, it's great to hear that,
It goes deep, Jerry. I mean, I've got a couple anecdotes just concerning you real quick. I'm self-taught, and all I do is spend a lot of time by myself. No girlfriends or really, and I'm just really shy, and I stay to myself, and I go home and I play every day. And I was working at a Christmas tree lot, delivering Christmas trees around, and I had Peter Gabriel's plays live. It never came out of the cassette. It never came out in the car. It's just a month of every day delivering Christmas trees, listening to that stuff, just memorizing it. I wasn't even in front of a kit. I was just driving around. Just absorbing, and I knew what was coming next, and just pulling these fills and pulling these grooves from you. I just became obsessed, and I had to, look up what the songs were about.
I appreciate that. That was the culmination of us playing together, jamming together, touring together, fighting together, yelling at each other together. Although Tony David didn't really yell much, Peter did. The English guys don't yell. Tony doesn't yell. I'm the Italian crazy, kooky. I was the wild rock and roller. I was
Yeah.
the typical. I was your quintessential drummer. But that's the culmination of just being together. Peter and I used to run every day. Like we used to run up Salisbury Hill, like a 5-mile run. Every morning we'd be out there, either we'd be talking or chatting or silent or talking about music or talking about what we want to do. You know what I mean?
That's how ABBA wrote Dance while he was jogging.
They wrote what?
That's how the guitar player of ABBA wrote Take a Chance. He was jogging.
Yeah, sure.
Strangely enough, you got that rhythm. Now, speaking of plays live again, I just, going back to your bio, like, why in the world, maybe you don't know, Rick Springfield had a record out that was mainly originals, but I think he included some songs from other people, and I Go Swimming was actually on one of his records, and it just seems really strange why that was included.
You know what? I don't know. I have no idea. I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
But I occasionally get people asking me about working with Rick Springfield.
Yeah.
And I say, oh, it's got to be my brother because I never worked with Rick Springfield. I met Rick Springfield. He came to a Gabriel concert in LA at, I think it was the Universal Amphitheater.
Mm-hmm.
It was an outdoor venue in Los Angeles. Or the Greek Theater or something like that.
Probably the Greek, yeah.
Universal Amphitheater, was that an indoor or outdoor?
Indoors, yeah.
Okay,
Probably
so it was like, must have been the Greek.
Yeah.
It's the Greek. It's over off of the 101, between Hollywood and and the Valley back, but over near, where I'm talking.
If it wasn't Hollywood Bowl, it was the Greek, yeah.
No, it was the Greek. So, but Rick came to that show with the president of Geffen Records. And that show blew people's minds. Blew people's minds. It was the tour for security, San Jacinto, all that stuff. People like the Toto guys, the Jackson 5 guys were back.
Wow.
All these people, these WAP people. And then I remember Ed Rosenblatt, the president of Geffen. When you come off stage, you know what it's like. You want a few minutes, or more. And Ed brought Rick Springfield back like almost immediately. And Rick Springfield couldn't even look up. He was like, he was so blown away. He was like, oh, man, that was like the best show I've ever seen. He was like, you know what I mean? He was so blown away, like he couldn't even look up at me. He was just looking down. And he asked me if I would be interested in touring with him. And I seem to remember maybe meeting up with him in London. Maybe. Things get fuzzy because, I did the full rock and roll experience, sex, drugs, rock and roll.
You're still here.
So there's certain things I don't quite fully remember, but
MTV was exploding at that time too. So that video, Shock the Monkey video and all the other things surrounding it really probably brought some excitement to that.
I did a Hall & Oates. We did a Hall & Oates record in like 79. I think MTV might have hit like in 80 maybe. And I guess the Buggles video, Kill the Radio Star, I think was maybe the first video got played. But the Hall & Oates video, a video that we did was getting played on MTV because at the time they just needed content. There weren't a million videos out there. So it's an interesting story. A whole show could be done about how the state of the music business in 1980, music business was like in the garbage. I mean, the Breakfast in America, I think it was the Supertramp record, was the #1 record in the country, and I think it didn't even sell 1 million copies, that's unheard of.
Wow.
The business was going under, and the MTV saved the music business at the time. And
Yeah,
then
it
it
was
made
like Breakfast in America, Styx, REO Speedwagon, and then I remember right when MTV broke, it's this more of this. I mean, they did have the hard rock acts, but it's like the the Pretenders and U2 and these things that were coming in that had these
police.
new sounds, and Peter and these synthesizers and stuff like that, and you could apply visuals to these new sounds that were. It was just different.
Absolutely.
So through this,
So, I mean, just to make sure you understand, like when I started working with Peter, my approach to music shifted big time,
yeah,
big time.
for sure.
You know, and I'm very grateful to that. And my approach to just overall, like just looking at the material and trying to do something a little bit different rather than straight away just hitting, playing a drum beat. So anyway, that's that.
Yeah. So you explained kind of how you each appreciated your specialty, and that's how you worked so well together. But in some of these other big name acts you've been attached to, maybe Hall & Oates or Stevie Nicks or Paul McCartney, was there a situation? Would you say it's half and half? Half you go into the studio and you work as a team, and the other half just come in and do your job and don't say anything. just be a pro, do your job, and then you're not attached to the tour or anything like that. Would you say it's mostly a team effort when you get hired?
Well, I mean, you go in, like for instance, both the Elvis Costello record and Stevie Nicks record, the records were basically done. And the last thing they were doing was putting real drums, on songs and replacing the drum machines.
Okay.
So, and Elvis's record was fantastic. I mean, and
that was recorded in 3 different cities, right?
But what I did was in L.A. And Veronica was probably the last really big hit he had. Stevie Nicks was the same thing. They had recorded the whole record, piecemeal. I think it was Rupert Hine that was producing it, and then whatever, he's a keyboard player and blah blah blah. And then I got called in to overdub drums, and that what are you going to do? I mean, I go in and I do my thing, and if they either like what I do, the smart people are like, look, Jerry, just do your thing. Let's hear what you want, your take on it, and then we work from there. Like, that's a little too out. That's a little too left of center. Let's bring it in a little, whatever, But rarely do people ever say, just play the drum, don't do any, don't be creative. Why hire me for that? You can hire anybody.
Sure.
Anybody can do that.
All these different personalities, famous personalities and different musical styles. Was there a point, you said when you were 10, when you were 12, falling in love with the drums, was there a book or a private instructor that made a huge impact, so you did this huge leap and you were able to open up your mind and your ears to attach yourself to playing these different styles, or was it just listening to a lot of your favorite records?
Records, no books.
Okay. Yeah.
I taught myself how to play.
Yeah.
I don't know how to read. I wouldn't be able to read a book.
Yeah.
I could maybe listen to somebody, but like explaining, but they didn't have YouTube back then. Now you can just probably study drumming just on YouTube. But I just listened to records. That's all. And absorbed things that way. But I never listened to copy anything. It's like just to play, just listen to get an idea of what I liked, and got it into my head. That's it.
At your opinion, what do you think your first pro gig was? As young as you were.
Oh, I know what it was. I can't remember. No, it had to be Arthur, Hurley, and Gottlieb, the group that was like Crosby, Stills, and Nash. They had a record on Columbia. This was 1973. Okay, so my brother had done the record. They asked him if he would go on tour with them, and he was just too busy doing sessions in New York. He was going to do that. But he said, my little brother, great drummer, perfect for you guys. So I went and I met them, and we played, and they said, well, we love you. You're the guy. We want you to be our drummer. Now, it's the summer of 11th grade for me. I'm going to summer school to eliminate the senior year. I want to graduate a year early. Problem was, it was about a week before summer school ended, the tour started. So I went to my teachers we take 2 classes, and I explained the situation to them, and I took my final exams on the road in the summer of 11th grade.
Wow.
To graduate high school. And I know I did them, but I don't remember. I don't remember doing them, but I know that I did them, and I know I handed them in when I got back from the tour, and I went back to the school. So that was 1973. That was my first professional job.
Wow, 11th grade.
That was great. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better situation. Music was really great. The guys were great. They were in college or just out of college. So they were maybe 4 or 5 years older than me. And
so did you have to do the thing where you could do the sound check, but then, once the show was over, you had to get out and the 21 and up venues? Like,
no,
you were playing underage. You were just able to hang out.
No, that didn't apply.
Yeah.
We did mostly. We were doing a lot of college gigs.
Okay.
We weren't doing a lot of bar gigs. I mean, they had a top 40 single. They had the big time management. They had very high hopes for this band, to break them. I'll tell you what was a problem is there was an artist named Henry Gross back then, and he had a big hit called Shannon, and I auditioned to play with him, and I was 17, and I auditioned and we played, and he was like, Jerry, you're great. I love you, but we're basically going to be playing, we're playing a lot of bars. This tour is going to start off. I'm afraid that somebody might not allow you to, there could be a problem, which I don't think there would have been a problem, really.
Yeah.
With, I'm there not drinking. I'm there as a performer. It wasn't like a bar gig per se. It was a club. Back then there were clubs that were bars, but they were big. They were like 300, 400, 500 people. It wasn't like a little bar. And so he said, yeah, it's just too risky for me to take you. I'm afraid. And I mean, I didn't do that gig because of that, but the Art Really Gottlieb gig, we did a lot of college. We did a lot of college gigs, a lot of concerts, opening for other people, the first gig I did with them, I flew to Miami. I'd never been to Florida. Flew to Miami. I'm like, I don't know, 16, 17. And we opened a show for Richie Havens in 1973, which back then he was huge. So it was a big concert hall, and we opened for them, and that was the first gig I did. It was like, I mean, I can't even, you can imagine what it was like. It was just, I'm in Florida. I've never been to Florida.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I'm playing with a band, playing on a big concert in a big concert hall. And, it was just magical.
You were talking about your band leader saying it'd be too risky to take you out. You've had all this success. Like, you have one of the longest resumes I've seen, and I've seen some long resumes on my little channel. Have you ever gone into an audition and not gotten it?
Yeah.
Even in the later years? Yeah.
I don't know. In later years, I didn't really necessarily need to audition. Like, if people wanted me to work with them, they knew my work, once I started doing a lot of stuff. But I auditioned to play with a guy named Diodato, like a piano player, and he had done a big hit with a version of 2001: A Space Odyssey, but it was like a funky rock version.
Was that with
And
Andy Summers?
no,
Oh,
no. This is this is before Andy Summers. Well, no, I don't know. But I auditioned to do that gig, and yeah, I didn't get that. That's one of the few gigs I didn't get.
Yeah, I would say.
I had another weird audition that I didn't know was an audition, which I didn't care. I would have done it anyway. But I got a call from Steve, the lead singer with Journey.
Steve Perry.
Steve Perry.
Yeah.
I got a call from him. Hey, Jerry, we're replacing the drummer. We're replacing Steve Smith. He kicked him out of the band, and the bass player. He said, and somebody recommended you, and I listened to what you're thinking, but I think you're the guy. You should, you want to join Journey? And I was like, oh my God, I would love that. I love Journey, love that.
Yeah.
So I flew out to San Francisco. And they have a big warehouse and everything's set up, and I got drums set up. And so I go and we start playing, and about 45 minutes into it, he turns around and he goes, we got to move on to the next guy. I mean, I don't want to do like the cattle call thing, but I stood up, and with the angriest Italian look on my face, I stood up from behind the drums, and I was like, what? So he starts backing away. He won't even turn his back on me. I think he was so scared I was going to fucking tackle him.
Yeah.
So he disappears. And I didn't get that gig.
Yeah.
And you know what? If he had said to me, Jerry, we're looking for a drummer, and there's like a handful of guys that we're going to try out to see. One of them is you. We would like it to be you, And I would have done it. I would have done it in a second. It's like, yeah, man, I love Journey. That would be like a dream come true to play in that band. So I didn't get that job. I can't really think of any others. Those were the two, mostly, they were like auditions, and
yeah. Even some of the biggest, most talented drummers I've spoken to, there was always like one big, thing, much like that they went in, and they didn't get it, and it's just funny. Like, some people are looking for something very, very specific. In Zach's case with Madonna, she wanted someone who works with drum machines all the time, and at that point he didn't.
Who said that? Zach?
Zach, yeah.
Zach Alford. What, did he audition to play with Madonna?
Yeah, but I mean, he's played with everyone else in the world. It's like, what is it actually that she's looking for? I don't really. She's a genius as far as what she does, but I don't see her as like a musical savant. So. What is it exactly she's looking for? She wants someone who works with electronics.
It could have been any one of a number of things.
Yeah.
That that day she could have been in a bad mood, and she just was pissed off. You know what I mean? Like, she's a bit of a diva, and and the funny thing is, Zach, he's like a machine.
Yeah.
That guy. Have you ever seen him play? I mean, he's so on it, like. So on it, I don't know, and he could certainly play with a drum machine. I mean, with drum machines, he might not have really wanted to do that.
I think he was just learning about it at the time. He didn't used to do that before, so.
Yeah.
So you're a studio owner. You're a drummer. Genius drummer. You write songs. You're a music director, studio owner. You're a multi-instrumentalist. I'm assuming. Did you have a credit for working with Tears for Fears, putting together a saxophone arrangement and percussion? Did you teach yourself the other instruments as well?
Well, I took saxophone lessons when I was like,
Oh,
young teenager, you know. But when I was taking saxophone lessons, my brother brought a drum kit into the house, and the minute I sat down at drums, I was like, I wasn't practicing the saxophone.
yeah,
I was playing the drums all the time. You
yeah.
know, our poor parents, because my brother, when he wasn't playing, I was playing, so the drums were going all the time. So, um, but keyboards and guitar, bass, those are instruments that I play. I do my thing and I play them fairly well. Bass, I would say that I play on. I played on records. I've played on records that I didn't produce. I put bass on things, and people said, "Oh, let me throw." I've done drums, and then I said, "I'm gonna just throw. Let me throw a bass on here," and I put a bass on. They're like, "We love that bass. We love your bass part." So, but that's probably the best thing I do, and of course, from many, many, many years of playing with Tony Levin, through osmosis, if I can do anything, it's it's really come from like just hearing Tony play and working together so much. I mean, I'm no Tony Levin, but the approach to the instrument,
Right.
but
Well, you
I
played
love
with half of the '80s King Crimson lineup. You played with Robert Fripp too, right?
yep, worked with Robert and Trey.
I love those '80s colored records.
Yeah,
Yeah. And someone would say, wasn't it intimidating to play with Jerry Marotta? I would think you were. I'm sure you weren't intimidated, but man, like masters of their instruments. I'm wondering how that like, what was the vision of that project when it started? Did it start off as a jam or
which one?
Fripp?
Uh,
And,
the thing I did with Robert was exposure. First of all,
Mhm.
Robert produced one of Peter Gabriel's records.
Okay.
That's how it started. And then I didn't know who Robert Fripp was, and I didn't know who King Crimson was, and I didn't care. I mean, I wasn't intimidated but I was hearing a lot of talk about, don't look him in the eyes, don't talk to him,
Wow.
blah blah blah. He's very strange. He's this, he's that. I didn't know. And but the very first day we worked together in a studio in Holland, starting to do the Peter Gabriel record, I we set everything up and we started playing, and then very first day, and at the end of the session, Robert said to me, he goes, "Jerry, could you please stay after the session? I'd like you to stay here." And I thought, oh, okay, I'm getting fired. I'm getting fired.
Hmm.
Like, that's it. I didn't even last a day. And so, because I don't know the guy, but I keep hearing about how strange he is, right? So
Yeah.
I go, everybody leaves, and Robert, he says, "Oh," he goes, "All right, come in the control room." I go in the control room. He says, "Sit down on a couch behind there." And he's got the two Revox tape machines, the Frippertronics thing. So he said, "Just sit down, have a seat, Jerry." And then he proceeds to do like a Frippertronics thing, that he's very famous for.
Yeah.
And then, and then I don't know. Then we were done, and we maybe chatted a little bit, but it was his way of saying, "I like you."
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, because people would kill to
Yeah.
sit in a room
Yeah.
while he was doing that. And he sort of shared this experience.
He's inviting
That's
you
the way
into
I-
his
That's the way
private
I.
world.
It's like, "Jerry, I'm going to share with you, like this thing that I do. I want you to see what I do, because I like what you do." And then from that point on, I mean, the first thing I did on his record was in London, and he was working at the Townhouse studio, and I went there, and he had the drum set up. He said, "Okay, Jerry, come on in." He goes, we're gonna run something. Play anything that you want. Just play anything." So he runs something, and I just start, bashing away, a simple rock thing. And he's like, that's great, perfect, And then eventually he started calling me Fat Ape on drums, because now I am a fat ape. But back then I was skinny, but I was pounding on the drums, like
Okay.
pounding. And I wasn't playing, it wasn't prog,
Mhm.
and I think he loved that, like Peter loved that. I think he was, the Genesis, Phil Collins, and the Bill
Busyness, yeah.
Yeah,
Everything was
that-
synced up with saxophones. Da-da-da-da-bup-bup-bup-bup-bup.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think they just loved that simple, and I love that too. And I can't even do the other thing because I don't have those chops. So, and that was the beginning of the relationship with Robert. We did a record. I did a record with him and David Sylvia. That's awesome. And Tragon was like Robert's sidekick. Plays war guitar, like the Chapman's.
Oh, okay.
Trey. So that was kind of the beginning of that.
I don't want to keep you for much longer. I just have a couple other things.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I have
look, honestly, Burke, I can tell you this. I'm surprised I didn't actually say this to you. It's like we could do this in increments because we haven't even scratched the surface.
Oh, I know. Trust me.
But I love that you're focusing on 70s and 80s.
Yeah. That's my stuff.
I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface, and we could talk for hours. Just like I'm sure a lot of the guys, like Greg Bissonette and whoever, everybody's done so much,
Yeah.
But let's do a little bit more.
Appreciate it.
We're like at almost an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do a little bit more. Then I got to go deal with my son and granddaughter.
So, I explained I had the accident, but I'm able to play again. I'm about 75% back, and I have my own little school at the house. I was doing musical directing at the local School of Rock, and then I started my own thing a few years back. I have developed this thing. I mainly deal with very young musicians, and I have this thing called the drummer's tool belt, where I hand out these coins of achievement that they could put on a necklace, whether it be counting note values or fills or basic grooves or speed or whatever it is. And we do warm-ups with single stroke, double stroke. We go around and do flams and stuff like that. What would you say for a musician who's starting out, a drummer who's starting out, who really has a dream in their head, or would you put in like a drummer's tool belt that they can go around the world in any room and be able to communicate musically? And that could even be like, just have a good attitude. Technically or not.
What I say to drummers,
Yeah.
what to take, take them. What's a skill that they would want to, have that will help them become better drummers and better musicians and be able to integrate.
Be able to work with people in the same room.
What's that?
Be able to work with people in the same room that you've never met before.
Yeah, I would say for me, no question at all, put down the sticks and listen. Put down the sticks and listen. Put the sticks down. We'll go sit on a chair, get out from behind the drums and just listen. If you're playing with other people, and you're creating, something, listen for, and you know what? That's the course I want to teach at Berkeley, in Berkeley School of Music. I want to teach a course. Don't even bring your instrument. Don't bring your instrument. It's that's the thing that kills. To me, people make a huge mistake. Somebody starts playing something and you dive in within 3 bars, you're starting to play.
Yeah.
It's like, because the minute you start playing, you stop listening, and And this is particularly good if somebody wants you to play on a song of theirs. They want to play you this is a song of mine. I want you to, what would you play? Like, come on, put the sticks down, get away from the drums, and just listen to the song.
Yeah.
A few times, listen and think in your head what you're going to hit. This the thing of like in like Eastern philosophy. I'm trying to think of a good example, like samurai. I don't know if you ever saw the movie The Last Samurai.
Yeah.
But great movie, love it. And it's, there's a point where Tom Cruise is surrounded by like 4 guys, and there's this whole battle that goes on. And then you realize they haven't even begun fighting yet. And he's kind of orchestrated it in his head.
Mm-hmm.
And then they start fighting. And, it's very, I don't know what you call it, Zen, it's Eastern, it's, stop playing and think about what you want to play and put it, get it in your head, what you're thinking. And then now get behind the drums and start playing. And I think that's like one of the most important things people need to learn.
There's a lot of noodling. There's a lot of
I do it myself.
lead drummer. Yeah.
Anything I start playing, I make the same mistake myself. And it's a lot of times it's if I'm playing another instrument. Like I start playing around just because it's fun and I want to. But honestly, Burke, that I would say that's probably that's a chip. That's one of your
listen. I dare you to not noodle around. I dare you to make it simple. I dare you to play to the song.
Right. And look, it doesn't have to be simple.
Yeah.
But it has to be, it has to be thought out a little bit before you start playing,
Yeah.
That's to me, that's an important thing. And a lot of guys just don't do that. They just dive in and they start playing.
I agree. This one's a real quick, weird one. Walk Through the Fire is probably my favorite top 3 Peter Gabriel songs, but it wasn't on a record. It was just on the Against All Odds soundtrack.
Yeah.
Was that recorded in the same session as Security, or was that an in-between specifically for the movie?
Honestly, at that point, I don't even know. I don't even know. I mean, I don't know if I'm on it. I don't know if I'm not.
Oh, okay.
At that point, Peter got so carried away with like technology.
Yeah.
That I think it was detrimental to him. I think it started to take away from, and then it would take 6 years to make a record. I'll give you a good example, and then we can end this. Chad Blake, who's a good friend of mine and an engineer, and I've worked with him a lot. He was living in England, and he was working at Real World a lot, and he ended up mixing one of Peter's records. Us or Up or one of those records.
Yeah.
After So. And Chad said, Peter, they brought in a song of Peter's, and it had like 120 tracks. And he said, so I started building a mix, and I trimmed it down to like 60 tracks, 65 tracks, and no, the other stuff wasn't even necessary. So he played it for Peter. Peter sat there and he said, that's amazing. It's the best I've ever heard the song sound. That's great. I love it. And then he left. He came in the next day with 30 more tracks, 12 hi-hat tracks. And it was like, Chad said, he got to a point where he said, I don't even know if I can finish doing this. I mean, it's too frustrating, I get it to where it sounds great. And then he goes and does what he does and comes back with a shit ton of more tracks to blend in. Now, here's what I'm guessing happened. At this point, He's got guys with hoodies in production rooms sitting at, and he's passing it out, and they're all doing shit. You know, they're all, got them 4 guys, 2, 3, 4 guys, all doing what they think. You know, they're adding whatever they think. I don't think Peter went and did 12 hi-hat tracks. I think he put it out there. The point of this is, I think that's where technology really kind of overwhelmed him, and it was detrimental. We had a conversation about this, and I think I remember him agreeing that it had gotten out of hand. You know,
I did notice that on the So. I'm turning my mic down because the heater just turned on. I did notice on the So credits that it's like a drummer came in just to do a hi-hat track. That's a little odd. That's might be overthinking it a little bit. I mean, it did add to the element, but.
Well, I mean, on a song like Red Rain,
yeah,
like I played drums. Stuart Copeland played drum, you know, but then he might have taken just Stuart's hi-hat track.
Oh, okay.
And then manipulated that.
Oh, I got
and then
you.
he might have taken my toms, or, you know, that's what he did. He didn't get people, I don't believe he didn't get us to come in and just play.
Oh, okay.
Or just play hi-hat. I'm playing. So,
I know you gotta go. I really appreciate it. I want to end on a short little anecdote, just because this is a heartfelt thing for me. I'm so glad to be able to talk to you. So when I was 10, my grandpa came out of nowhere. I didn't know I had a grandpa. This was my mom's dad. He was a cop in Chicago. And so he came out of nowhere. He asked my mom if he could take me around the world for a few weeks. Before we did that, he bought me a snare drum. I'd never played drums before. It was a Premier steel snare. And at that time, there was magazines called Cream. It was a rock and roll magazine called Cream. And I'd go, every airport we landed in, I bought more and more Cream magazines. And so in the hotel room, it would just be me and him. I'd be reading these magazines and catching up on MTV and all this stuff. But we were in a bar in Puerto Rico, and I remember there was a monkey, a live monkey that was walking up and down behind the bar, and there was a jukebox in there, and there was no one else in the bar. Me, my grandpa, and this jukebox, and Voices just came out, and he gave me probably $20 worth of quarters, and I just kept feeding the machine kisses on my list, kisses on my list. I would walk back over, I would just keep feeding it, and at that age, like the sound, the low end that comes out of the jukebox is very exciting, you know, and it's like that drum beat just was so mesmerizing for me, and you know, he eventually dropped me back off, and I never saw him again. It was a weird deal, but I have that memory implanted in my head, and that
never saw your grandfather or the monkey?
Both.
You mean your grandfather appeared out of nowhere? Obviously, mother, she didn't have any relationship with him.
He didn't
have any relationship, and then he came out of nowhere, said, "Can I take Burke on a trip around the world?" And then, was he dying? It's like, well, you know,
he was just a loner.
Then you went home, and he disappeared, and you never saw him again.
No,
that's a phenomenal story.
I kept that Premier snare the whole time, and that's why.
And you became a drummer.
Yeah.
Was he not? I mean, did you hang? Did you interact with him? Was he friendly? Was he?
He would like. I remember he'd kind of show me off. Like, here's this grandson to whoever we were meeting, all these strangers. With, you know, I don't know who these people were, but basically swam around in hotel pools and read Cream magazine and fed jukeboxes. But it was that one in Puerto Rico.
How old were you?
10, 11.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
He was a loner, and I definitely relate to him. He stuck to himself, and whatever. I don't hate him for it or whatever, but I have so much music memory attached to that, and that kind of pushed me along to, you know, the next phase of whatever I was doing. So again, I thank you very much for that memory, and I'm so glad you're still around and you're still producing music.
Yeah, man. You know, when I come out to Seattle, because the Security Project, Michael Kotze and Trey Gunn they're both based in Seattle.
Okay.
My guitar player has a studio, and Trey is you know, bass player, stick player. But
Cool.
yeah, I love coming out there. I love coming to Seattle. But I'll definitely get in touch.
Please
And
reach
let me
out.
know if you want at some point in the future you want to pick it up again and chapter 2. And also, could you send me a link,
Yeah.
or could you send me the I'll post it.
Okay, for sure.
Send me something. I do a lot of social media. I have a guy that handles that for me, and I'll help
Sure.
promote it.
No
So once you
problem.
get it, you're going to edit it or whatever. Just
Yeah.
send it to me.
I'll edit out my
The files.
anything stupid and ugly, and I'll polish it up and throw it back to you.
Yeah, no, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think of that. But anyway, really good finally talking to you.
Yeah. Thanks again for putting up with me.
Yeah,
And,
man. Hang in there. Feel good, and keep playing, and we'll speak again.
Okay.
All right,
Talk to you
awesome.
soon.